Hello, and welcome to a video breakdown of our group project. My name is James, and along with my two partners Gaia and Buchi, we designed, developed and prototyped a concept for the London Bridge Experience. The London Bridge Experience is an immersive theatrical attraction in central London. They use inventive techniques to transform their spaces in the John Rennie vaults into interactive scenes that both terrify and educate the guests that come to visit. We were asked to design two scary and educational experiences for two separate rooms in the vaults: the Ripper Street and the Brownlow Study. As well as an idea for a clown box installation that comes at the end of the attraction and attempts to quickly scare the guests as they leave the vaults. Before designing our experience, we first researched the history of John Rennie and London Bridge. And to make sure we could scare the guests, we also spent time researching scare tactics and fear psychology. For the Ripper Street scene, we sketched and photoshopped some ideas together before deciding on this final idea, which we presented to the client. This murder scene would have been in a very dark room that the audience would have used flashlights to explore and find clues to escape. Throughout the scene would have been light-dependent Arduino systems that activated motors in the corpses and in the rats. Bad smells, scary audio cues, and water dripping from the ceiling would all have been elements used to scare the audience. However, we were asked to discontinue work on the Ripper Street as the client preferred our ideas for the Brownlow Study, which we planned to transform with projection mapping. Projection mapping is a technique we had seen used to great effect in several installations. It uses digital maps of real-world environments to transform them into whatever you can imagine. Now that we had decided on our main technique, it was time to further develop and begin storyboarding our main idea. First, we will use motion sensors to detect when the audience has entered the room. The room will then go dark and the audience will hear a voice welcoming them to the experience. We will project a pre-recorded interaction onto John Rennie Jr.'s mannequin and his father's painting. They will first introduce themselves and begin a funny and educational dialogue about the history of the vaults in London Bridge. Here is a brief demo of our prototype showing this effect. We will have a closer look at this later on.
By an appropriate agent, personified in this case by an honourable me.
While the audience is listening to Rennie's story, two parrots will fly violently into the room to scare the audience. Parrots were very commonly kept as pets in the 1700s and 1800s, but we can choose any other animal. After a few seconds, the birds will fly to John Rennie's desk and become holograms once they've positioned themselves inside two hologram prisms we will have on his desk. Here you can see our experiments with holograms. John Rennie then reveals that they are not actually in London, but in the original vault of the bridge that is now in Arizona. Rennie says that although he is the architect of the modern construction, there is a long story about the older version of the bridge, and tells the audience that it has magical properties. He says that the vault he built can travel through space and time, and asks the audience if they want him to show them. Voice recognition sensors will capture the audience's yes and the room will start travelling. If the audience doesn't answer right away, the mannequin will repeat the question and ask them to say yes and don't be shy. Here are our experiments combining holograms and voice recognition. Triangle. Tree. The bridge will start flying over Lake Havasu City in Arizona, taking the audience through local landscapes, finally to space, and then to London. Rennie says that now they are in London, he can show them how the vault travels through time. The room will turn upside down in order to give an idea of travelling back in time. In prehistorical times, bridges were also considered sacred places. The audience will travel to a mystical place where people will be able to interact with the projections. This is going to be possible through the use of Kinect technology. It would be possible to project onto a smoke screen for a 3D holographic effect if the venue can support it. The vault will then travel to different historical events important to the history of the bridge, such as the insurrection guided by the Celtic Queen Boudica, the medieval market situated along the bridge, and the Great Fire of 1666. The journey will end the day the old London Bridge was demolished. The bridge will start breaking down and water will start submerging the room. The experience will end underwater. The exit door will be illuminated, and Rennie will inform the audience that there is so much more about the London Bridge and ask the audience to proceed to the next room to find out. In our first experiment with projection mapping, we mapped my room and projected fire and water and a particle effect onto two walls and the ceiling. Apologies for the video quality, but the room had to be dark to see the projections properly and the camera didn't work too well in those conditions. But it looked good in real life, I promise. In our next experiment, we tried to recreate the Brownlow study in my room using a mannequin head and a piece of cardboard to represent the painting. And then we projected a face onto the mannequin head and a animated video onto the painting on top of John Rennie, which you have seen already in the previous part of the video. On top of this, we added fire around the door and on top of the sofa, and we added a portal effect in the frames of the door and a moving eye.